Good morning, everyone. It's Lindsay Baker with the Action Hour. Today, I am here with Rebecca Knowles of Farmers for Stock-Free Farming. And Rebecca, I have to say, after I reviewed the information that you gave me, I realized this is good news, not only for farmers, for animals, for the environment, for our health, because we are moving forward in technology into an area that we can exclude animals, and it's the best business practice to do so. And you are going to be giving us all this good news. Thank you for being here today, Rebecca. We are so pleased to have you. How did you start off doing what you're doing? I understand that you actually come from a farming background.
Yeah, that's right, Lindsay. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here. I have a farming background. I grew up, both granddads were farmers. My uncle farmed. My granddad was actually a butcher, third generation butcher. So I always loved animals and I love the outdoors. So my dream as a little girl was to be a farmer. I always wanted to be a farmer. So I did go to agricultural college and I took a degree in agriculture and worked on farms, a hill sheep farm, beef farm. I've done arable farming and market gardening. So and then went through a few career changes to get where I am today. But yeah.
And where you are today is an amazing place because you are showing farmers, I'm paraphrasing, but how to thrive in a changing world and a changing economy. Let's jump right into your survey and give people a little overview of what we're talking about, and then you can go into it in more detail.
Making a living from farming is not easy. According to the Scottish Government, agriculture is an industry dependent on support, with 85% of farm business income coming from subsidies. The average farm business loss from agricultural activities is £14,600. For sheep and beef farmers in less favoured areas, however, these losses are more acute, with the average farm making a loss of £27,400 a year without support. With our departure from the European Union, the future of rural payments is uncertain. Robin Dandy, Agricultural Business Advisory Partner with Johnson Carmichael, is encouraging farmers to review what percentage of their income is coming from subsidy and how low these subsidies could drop for their farms still to be viable and for financial commitments to be met. Many farmers and crofters will be wondering if and how they can survive. In addition to financial vulnerability, a shift in consumer preferences threatens to impact animal agriculture. A survey by supermarket giant Waitrose found that 1 in 3 people in the UK have stopped or reduced their meat consumption. The consumer research group Finder predict that 12 million Brits will be meat-free by the end of 2020, and Sainsbury's Future of Food report forecasts that by 2025 vegans and vegetarians will make up a quarter of the UK population. What are the reasons for these changes? The main factors seem to be concerns over the environment and climate change, factors related to human health, and a desire to uphold the rights and well-being of people and animals. New advances in biotechnology pose a further threat to the livestock industry.
Wow. So we're going to unpack all of this, Rebecca, but I just wanted to go back a little bit now and talk about how long has Farmers for Stock-Free Farming been in existence, and how did you come about starting it?
Yeah, well, I actually sort of had the first idea in 2014. I've lived abroad most of my adult life, and I'd just come back to Scotland, and it was springtime, and the fields were full of sheep and lambs, and I would give my neighbour lifts because her car had broken down. So I'd give her lifts into Inverness, and she would go on about the lambs and how cute the lambs were. And I would tell her the truth behind the lamb story and what was going to happen to these cute little creatures in 4 to 6 months. And at that point, it occurred to me that the vegan movement very much needed to focus on the production side as well as the consumption side. And I think, you know, the vegan movement to date has focused largely on consumption. What can we eat? What are people going to eat? And very little on the farmers. And farmers will always be the people who produce our food. And maybe because I have a farming background, I have a special heart for farmers. And so I wanted to be able to present alternatives and show them ways to thrive and to still farm without the exploitation of animals. So that's how it really started.
Yes, and from this survey, 85% of their income comes from subsidies. And now, because of drawing out of the EU, those subsidies are in a kind of shaky situation. So 85% of their income could go away.
Yeah, it's shocking, really, isn't it? In fact, I've just come back from 10 days on the road doing the farmers survey, and I've actually been going farm to farm in the Highlands of Scotland, and it's been a very interesting time. You know, I think we make a huge assumption, and maybe governments around the world make a huge assumption when they think that farmers are always going to want to farm animals, because what our survey's showing is that's simply not true. And there's a great, I've discovered a great openness to change and a receptiveness to new ideas. So basically those subsidies that have been directed towards animal agriculture, if they were redirected towards doing something different, for example, growing crops for human consumption or restoring native ecosystems, then farmers would do that. They will go what they're paid to do, basically.
That is such good, like I said, that is so incredible. And for us to give our support, I know everyone else, vegans, non-vegans, well, I don't know so much about non-vegans, but I know vegans of the world would jump on the chance to support farmers. And many people are interested, and we're going to go into this, your survey goes into this. How people are changing their attitudes and what they're looking for in food, and they're making the connection. What you eat, what you put in your body, has a big, result of your health. It has a big part of that. It's based on what you eat. And would you like? Is this a good time? Should we show another clip, or should we talk about the biocyclic standard and why that's important? Am I jumping a bit ahead here, or just you kind of give me the lead?
We can show another clip if you like, Lindsay, and show a bit more of the survey. That'd be fine.
I think that'd be great. This survey is very, very informative. I also want to talk about the independent report from Rethink a little bit, to show the scientific basis of all of this. And I know that sometimes farmers or people in that farming industry or animal agriculture do watch the show, and we're hoping they do watch, because I think this is good news. We also want to talk about at some point how this relates to the U.S. and how our farmers can transition as well.
Independent think tank Rethink X describes an advancement in biotechnology that creates high-quality protein from microorganisms, fungi, algae, and protozoa. The report states that this protein will be superior to animal proteins in every way, quote, more nutritious, healthier, better tasting, and more convenient, with almost unimaginable variety, end quote. By 2030, these proteins are predicted to be 5 times cheaper than existing animal proteins, causing a drop in the demand for beef and dairy by 50%, with other livestock markets following suit. Whether we agree or disagree with the rationale behind these threats to our livelihoods is immaterial. The fact is, change is happening, and in order to survive, and maybe even thrive, we must change too. At a recent Scottish Farm Advisory Service conference, the day's emphasis was on diversification, making the best of what you have and shaping business around change. We were reminded that in the midst of chaos and disruption lies opportunity. So let's explore some of those. The first opportunity to be explored is whether growing crops for human consumption is feasible on your land. Currently, almost half of Scottish cropland is used to grow animal feed. More than 50% of the cereals grown on Scottish farms and more than half of all vegetables go to livestock feed. A 2019 study by Harvard Law School showed that if all current UK cropland was used to grow crops for human consumption, it would more than provide for the calorific, protein and nutrient needs of every person in the UK. Many Scottish growers are already doing this. Stewart's of Tayside is a famous example of a farm that made the switch from sheep and cattle to growing crops for human consumption. This turned out to be the profitable move that financed the purchase of the farm and led to them becoming the largest independent soft fruit grower in Scotland. Kettle Produce is another hugely successful grower who currently partners with over 50 farmers throughout Scotland growing roots, brassicas and salad vegetables. It's not just about fruits and veggies. It's also about repurposing and expanding the potential of some of the other crops that we already grow, such as wheat and oats, and resurrecting some of the oldies, such as hemp and fava, in order to cash in on the expanding markets. Even in areas deemed unsuitable for crops, pioneering farmers are growing food. One crofter in Sutherland is expecting to harvest 12 kilos of hazelnuts from each of the 312 hardy hybrid hazelnut trees planted on her rough Highland croft. Another enterprising couple from Murray are growing mushrooms in a refurbished shipping container, using the waste heat from a Speyside distillery to create the microclimate for growing. Despite these innovative growers, however, it is argued that most of Scotland's agricultural land is not suitable for cropping and can therefore only be used for grazing cattle and sheep. Currently.
So let's get into this part. But before we do, I just want to mention for the American audience what crofting is. Crofter.
Crofting is peculiar to Scotland, and it's just peculiar to the North and West Highlands of Scotland. So a croft is a very small holding, a very sort of a small farm, really. And in Scotland, they're called crofts. So they can vary in size from maybe just 3 hectares all the way up to maybe, 40 or 50 hectares.
I see. Yeah. So I looked that up and I didn't know what it meant, but basically, let's just go through this step by step a little bit, talking about this opportunity that you found. And in the video we just watched, there are a lot of veggies that they could grow, but also there are other opportunities. And as we go through the next clip, we'll see there's even more. If you're not going to use the land to grow, there's even more. So how did you begin to find out about all this? How did you do the work to find all these case studies? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, the whole idea of the sort of 3 roads to stock-free farming that the video presents, the survey presents, and I know we'll talk about, that came about actually through our political lobbying work. This was a couple of years ago, and we were meeting with some Scottish politicians. And at that time, we were sort of lauding the benefits of the shift to a plant-based diet and how that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions, that can save land, that can then be repurposed for other things. And this one politician just stopped us in our tracks and basically said, if you do that, if we shift to a plant-based diet, you're going to put 60% of Scottish farmers out of business. And that gave us, we paused at that point and thought about it. We knew he was wrong, but we knew we had to show he was wrong. And that's how the 3 roads to stock-free farming was born. So what he was talking about is what we're going to see next in the video is farmers who have land that's unsuitable for growing crops for human consumption, or it would be very, very difficult. So we wanted to provide options for these farmers too, who have land where they maybe can't grow crops. It's rough grazing. So we wanted to make sure that no farmer need be left behind and that all farmers can have what we call a just transition when we move away from livestock agriculture.
Let's watch the next clip.
Decline in public demand for red meat, grazing ruminants is environmentally problematic. By food group, red meat, that's beef, lamb and pork, is the highest emitter of greenhouse gases per person in Scotland, with ruminant meat having environmental impacts 20 to 100 times greater than plant-based foods. This is problematic as the Scottish Government have pledged to be net zero by 2045. A recent study by the Centre for Innovation Excellence in Livestock showed that even if all known emission reduction strategies are implemented, by 2035 we will still only reach 19% of the goal for total agricultural emissions. Clearly, reducing greenhouse gas emissions is not enough. We need to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So the second opportunity for farmers and crofters lies in cashing in on the Scottish Government's ambitious climate goals. The climax vegetation of Scotland is trees. In other words, if we leave the land alone to regenerate, it will ultimately return to native forest. A 2019 study showed that if all rough grazing and permanent pasture in Scotland were to be left alone to re-wild, it would remove 1,052 million tonnes of CO2 from the atmosphere, the equivalent to offsetting a staggering 35.5 years of current Scottish CO2 emissions. Private corporations and individuals are looking to offset their carbon footprints by paying farmers and landowners to do this critical work. Additionally, the Scottish Government have pledged £64 million to forestry and £40 million to the Agricultural Transformation Programme, specifically to, quote, support farming's contribution to meeting Scotland's climate change ambitions, unquote. So let's make sure we get our share of that. The third opportunity lies in farmers and crofters diversifying into non-traditional agricultural activities. A 2019 Scottish Government report found that farmers who diversify into non-traditional farm use have incomes that average £19,600 per year higher than farmers who don't. Quite an incentive. Examples of a diversification include activities related to tourism, such as camping, glamping or Airbnb, repurposing outbuildings to grow mushrooms, or renting them out for storage space or special events, and promoting the use of one's land for anything from glass sledging to music festivals. According to NFU Mutual's diversification report in 2020, 65% of farmers in England have already diversified with a total additional income of £740 million in 2018-19. To summarise, we have outlined 3 opportunities to survive and thrive the upcoming changes to our food system. Growing crops for human consumption, rewilding permanent and rough grazing land, and diversifying into non-traditional agricultural activities. The questions that follow will ask for your views on these opportunities and give you the chance to add ideas of your own. Thanks for watching, and feel free to watch again.
Oh, this is a very, very interesting. We're getting a couple of questions here from a couple of viewers. Let's just try to answer those, and then we're going to break this down even more. Jamie Sanders, I guess it's, how do we break free of the political impact of animal agriculture?
Well, this is something that we're really working on over here. As I said, we've been lobbying. And we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the equivalent of our sort of environmental minister, our rural economies minister. And actually her team were very interested in the work we're doing and very interested in the results of the survey, because they know the facts on climate change. You know, they know the facts on how intensive farming has devastated our environment and how we're running out of time to get it back. So I suppose they're wondering, how far maybe can we push farmers? How much can farmers be expected to change? And our survey is revealing that. So I think lobbying, and we're asking very specifically for certain shifts. For example, we're asking for a stock-free transition fund. We're asking for a stock-free eco-restoration fund. We're also asking currently in Scotland anyway, that the odds are stacked against farmers that do not have livestock. If you have land in a certain area and you do not have livestock, you will not get any subsidies. And so farmers are stuck in this situation where if they want to get funding for their land, if they want to get subsidies from the political system, they have to have cattle or sheep. So we're working directly to change that too. So I think lobbying is so important.
Yes. Yes, we have a couple of organizations that Jane Unchained works very closely with.
Mm-hmm.
Social compassion and legislation is one. I don't want to start naming because then I'm going to leave someone out, but it is super, super important to lobby. Of course, we have to hit this from so many different angles. We had one more question and then we'll go back to the story. Lindsay, could you please ask her if there's a way animal agriculture could be sustainable? Well, do we want animal agriculture to be sustainable? What we do have, though, well, I'll have you address this, but the one thing I want to just drop in here because I'm bursting with it is this the Rethink study they did of how with technology we can produce meat, even sell meat based on microorganisms. We've harvested animals macroorganisms, but now we want to microorganism harvest them. And I'm sure you can talk about that a little bit for us a little bit later, but wouldn't that be the way we're going? Hopefully. What's your take on that, Rebecca?
Yeah, I think that's one of many ways in which we're going. You know, they talk about the second domestication of animals, you know, the first one being sort of livestock. And what the Rethink X report is talking about is fungi, algae, and protozoa, and basically using a technique called precision fermentation to make brewed protein from these microorganisms, which, you know, corn is a famous example of that. And I think what's exciting about the report is that the great variety of proteins that they can make from this in terms of taste, in terms of texture, and how the price will be cheaper than meat and dairy. So that's very exciting. And so that's one way we're going. Another way, of course, is, you know, other plant proteins using our peas and beans, our buckwheat, our hemp, and many other plant proteins to make food, you know.
And the fact that we'll be able to feed the planet, we can touch on that for a moment. This is such a win-win, Rebecca. This is universally a win. Everybody wins. Can you just address it for a moment, how everybody wins?
Yeah, well, with the shift to, you know, biocyclic vegan agriculture, which is stock-free organic farming, the soil wins. You know, biocyclic vegan agriculture uses farming basically to restore the soil, to restore biodiversity, to create so much more food from a small area of land. You know, I was on a little farm, a very small farm the other day, and from just quarter of an acre, they're making, you know, £13,000 in 5 months. That's about $18,000 in 5 months from a veg box scheme that is supplying many families with their vegetable needs. So it can be a win economically for farmers as well. And we, you know, the global shift to a plant-based diet will reduce food's land use by up to 76%. You know, we can grow so much more food when we shift to plant-based production.
And we'd be taking less of the land, so it could go back to a lot of the part, what's it called, rough grazing, would go back to become reforestation. That would suck up all the carbon, that would eat up all the stuff we want to go away. Things could reverse so incredibly. peace-wise, compassion-wise, people are fed. They don't want to go to war. Most people don't want to fight. They're in desperate situations. I mean, we could go into so many of these subjects. Animals would be spared. It's just such a win-win. And the fact that the farmers don't have to be sacrificed, the farmers actually, if these programs get going, and that's another question, of course, our audience is primarily in the US. So how would this translate over to the American? You may not know about that, but you know more than I do. So could you just comment on that, how that would work here in the States, do you think?
I don't see why it would not work in the United States. You know, that farmers have many options over there too. The options that we're talking about in the video: growing crops for human consumption, restoring native ecosystems, diversifying into various non-traditional agricultural initiatives, and, you know, working, you know, having professional lobbyists that are working on the political system to get funding for farmers to make these shifts. I mean, we know that it's a win-win. Like you were saying, it's a win-win-win-win. It's biodiversity, it's climate change mitigation, it's human health. I mean, if you think about what the United States pays treating conditions such as heart disease or obesity or high blood pressure that come from, you know, the overconsumption of animal products, it would be a win for the economy as well. So there's absolutely no reason why this could not work in the United States.
And it seems like Scotland is going to be the model because it's working there.
I hope and I wish. That's what we've been saying to the Scottish government. Look, my vision is that Scotland would become the first sort of plant-based nation, and we could lead the way. You know, we're going to have the COP26 here next month. And what an example we would be. And I'm quite encouraged that, you know, we've just got a new sort of government really since May after the elections. We've got some young people in there. We've even got, you know, a vegan politician that we've been talking to. And the people we met with a couple of weeks ago, very open to change. So, you know, I'm a natural born optimist, but I feel very positive.
I think you have good reason.
Yeah.
I think you have very good reason. It's very, very positive. And with all the scientific data that's coming out and the new technology, I would love to go through each of the, well, what do you think best first? 10 reasons to shift, or should we go through some of the ways a little bit more in detail, like the for human consumption, specialty, et cetera? Do you want to talk about that first?
Yeah, well, either way, Lindsay, we could look at the 3 roads to stock-free farming and maybe some of the case studies, if you'd like to take a look at that. Or
sure. Do you have one particular case study you'd like to talk about? Could we go to the website?
Yeah, I think I would actually. I mean, we've got these 3 roads to stock-free farming, but I want to say is you don't have to pick one. You can do all 3. So one of the crofters we've worked with in the Highlands, this is Gina Bates, Highland Veganics. She has a rough Highland croft. She has one of those crofts where they say you cannot grow food. You can only graze cattle and sheep. And so when Gina bought the croft, there was indeed cattle on it from the former owner. I visited the croft. The ground was quite compacted. It was very muddy. And since she bought the croft, she's transformed it. So even though the government said, you know what, because you don't have livestock, you're not getting any subsidies, Gina actually crowdfunded a hazelnut orchard. So she has over 300 hazelnut trees that she's planted. She hopes in maybe a couple more years' time she'll be producing 12 kilos of hazelnuts per tree. Possibly making her own hazelnut milk. So she's producing food for human consumption. She's also quite handy with construction. She's building a glamping pod. So this is the 3rd road to stock-free farming, diversifying. She's diversifying into tourism. She's building a glamping pod on the croft so that she can have people stay there and earn a bit of extra money. And she's massively restoring the native ecosystem. Since the cows have gone, the biodiversity that's come back has really been incredible. You know, the croft has waterfalls, it has native woodland. It's really wonderful. And she's going to expand on the growing. She's going to put in more trees. She's going to repurpose the land for alley cropping. And this means planting rows of trees, which will probably be a mixture of nut trees and native broadleafs, and then growing crops in between the rows of trees. So she's diversifying in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's quite amazing. When we go on the site and we look at the beauty of Scotland, and of course, you know, when you just start to open up your mind and look at all the possibilities there are, it's just incredible. And it's such a positive message, you know, it's such a positive way of looking at the future. And it seems like without, you know, it's going that way anyway. We just need to kind of support it and nurture it and get it there. And as you say, that's through political lobbying, etc. So we're on your website right now. Is there another area you would like to go to in particular? I can navigate to while you speak.
Yeah, I think we could look at the 100 ways, maybe, Lindsay, if you want to look at the 100 ways.
Sure. Now, which one? I actually grabbed a screen capture from each of those.
Okay.
Maybe we can just.
Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
One thing I'm really excited about, I think it's in the repurposing land one, is a research project that we're doing right now. So this is under 100 ways repurposing land, which is LIFU production. So it's under alternative land use there.
Okay, great.
There you go. Should be
bring
under
that up.
there. I think if we scroll down, we see lots of different things here, like woodland, planting trees, and people who've actually done that, restoring native ecosystems. If we scroll down a bit further, we have the alley cropping. There's the alley cropping that I was just talking about. Lazy beds, another way to grow food. And I think we should have LIFU production on here if we keep going down. Yeah, here we are. Now, this is really exciting. LIFU production, just above that one, Lindsay. Basically what LIFU is leaf protein concentrate. And, in the Highlands of Scotland, we have a lot of grass and we have a lot of rough grazing areas. And an argument for grazing cattle and sheep is that the only way we can make food from grassland is to graze cattle and sheep and then eat the sheep and eat the cattle. Basically, what we're working on is a way to actually eat grass. That what we're growing is a mixture of grass and clover, and there's a process by which we extract the protein from the grass and clover and make this high quality protein for human consumption, and it's called LIFU. You've heard of tofu. This is LIFU. I've even made it myself from nettles, from weeds growing in my own garden. The protein content of LIFU is around 48% protein, compared to beef, which is 31%. So the potential of this, and it could be done in grassland areas in the United States as well, is that we can make high quality protein for human consumption from grass and clover pasture land. So that's something we're looking at as well.
And we want everyone to go to your website and join your newsletter to stay informed. We also want to just, if for anyone just tuning in now, we are talking about the good news, how technology and human preferences are converging to help us transition to a plant-based planet, which will basically solve all of the things that are going wrong right now. I know it sounds Pollyanna, but it's true. If you watch the video, you'll learn why. But I'm here with Farmers for Stock-Free Farming, Rebecca Knowles, who is the founding director, and we are talking about all the ways that farmers can transition. And we want to ask you to please share out this video as well as visit her website. I have a banner, which let me put up your web address here, farmersforstockfreefarming.org. And we could go back to the website here again. See if we can add that back to the screen. If there's another place you'd like to visit on your site. Oops, I think are we on yours? I think I closed it actually. But the other site that I'm on right now, which we can share, let's see if I can figure this out. Sorry, folks. Let me see if I can share this one. Oh, I can get back to yours. I can get back to yours. Here we go. There we go. So is there a place you'd like to go?
Well, I think looking at the 100 ways is quite interesting. We split it into 9 different categories. Those are the
Yes.
reasons. We could talk about those too as well. I mean, I think the 10 reasons are just basically common sense, that we need to shift for so many reasons, that to combat, financial uncertainty. Farmers are facing a lot of uncertainty, particularly in this country. Obviously, climate change, the COVID-19 pandemic. We've got changing consumer preferences. So there's many reasons for farmers to look at shifting. Yeah.
And maybe go a little bit more into some of the products that can come out of the specialty. Can you go through the?
Well, we're looking at some industrial hemp there, and hemp is an incredible plant. It's a superfood. It's a super protein. We've got 10 farmers in my area of Scotland, who are growing industrial hemp. And, hemp predated the mass influx of sheep in the Highlands here. We have documentation of hemp being grown in the Western Isles in the 1700s. And hemp used to be our mainstay for food, clothing, fuel, shelter. It's an all-purpose plant. We can use every single part of it. The hemp seed is very high in protein. It's the only plant that holds the essential amino acids in perfect balance with the 8 essential amino acids in perfect balance with the essential fatty acids. And so it's a superfood. So, hemp is having a bit of a revival in the UK, and I think it is in the United States as well. And there's a lot of lobbying to make it easier to grow hemp. Hemp sort of sadly became demonized in the United States, actually, in the 1920s.
Yes.
And we're trying to reverse that reputation. Also, hemp is a climate change champ. It sequesters 4 times the CO2 of trees in its growing cycle. So it's great for the environment too. It has long roots that hold the soil structure together. And it's an incredible plant. So that's one of the plants that we're sort of campaigning for. And yeah, it's exciting.
I have another question for you that might come from some of the our Vegan Watt viewers. Some of them object to us utilizing animals at all, and I do understand that belief, etc. But in the terms of how the cells of the animals are used, I know that that's not your area particularly, but could you just touch on that a little bit, in terms of how it's harvested and sustained, and how they keep making it, so to speak?
Are you talking about cell-based meat, Lindsay?
Yeah, cell-based meats, or any product where they're using cells to produce. It could be like spider hair, I read somewhere.
I mean,
this anything.
This is not really my area at all, cell-based meat.
Okay,
personally, I'm sort of opposed to cell-based meat personally, because I don't think we need it. I don't think it's necessary that we can make meat substitutes, as it were, from anything from hemp seed to peas to beans to the leaf protein concentrate that I just mentioned a few minutes ago, that we don't need the cells of an animal to make great tasting alternatives to meat, Yeah.
So, and I know that I was just going to say that I know that the CEO of Impossible Meat said every month we improve the meat that we make. Animal agriculture cannot say that, right? So the quality of the protein that we make.
Yeah, and I think those of us who've been vegans for a long time would really agree with that. If you eat meat substitutes.
I agree. But from my standpoint, and this is my opinion, is some people, I know some, that will never stop eating meat. And thank heaven there's a way not to harm animals. And I happen to know that harvesting the microcells, it sounds like this would be something, and I'm just speaking off the top of my head, that corporations that are now producing meat would be one of the ways to initially attract them. But then if there are better ways, you know what I mean? Because there are people that at this point are older. It's harder for them to change. I wish they would. but we have to face the reality, and just to stop the animal suffering and the planet destruction, to me, is huge. So
yeah, I mean, I agree with you that it's a better alternative to killing animals. Absolutely. If we can harmlessly harvest cells from animals without hurting them, and this is a way to transition the hardcore meat eaters away from consuming animals, then absolutely let's do it, Yeah, there's many controversial issues out there, isn't there? Like McDonald's now have a vegan burger, and vegans are divided. Like, I will never go to McDonald's versus
yeah,
it's great, So there's so many things out there.
yeah, and the idea is to keep moving forward. But the big picture here, and what you're presenting, of course, the big picture is a viable way. We don't want to stray from the subject too much. A viable business model to improve income for farmers. That is huge. There,
Yes.
right there. And the fact that farmers, I'm coming from the perspective of a farmer, I don't know if you're still farming vegetables now. Do you still farm at all?
I grow vegetables. Yeah, I have a
Vegetables.
veganic vegetable garden, and I grew potatoes this year, and beans and peas, and a few other things. Yeah, so yeah.
You mentioned veganic, and I know you want to talk about that. So this is a good time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So-
well, one of the things we offer on the website is certification for farmers and crofters, or ranchers, or whatever you want to call them, landowners, to certify through the Biocyclic Vegan Standard. So what that is basically veganic means stock-free, no livestock, organic. And I think this is crucial because I think even vegans don't realize that probably 99% of the vegan food we consume is produced either using, if it's organic, it's produced using farmyard manure or slaughterhouse byproducts such as blood and bone, or if it's conventionally produced food, it's produced using agrochemicals that kill the soil and the living organisms in the soil. So if we're really trying to live a life which is about harm none, the only option is veganic, basically food that has been produced without animal byproducts and with no harmful agrochemicals such as pesticides, herbicides, or even artificial fertilizer. So that's what the Biocyclic Vegan Standard does. So it's very important for that reason. What it does, the label sort of gives consumers the assurance that this food is aligned with their values. If you have the value of not wanting to exploit animals at all, then veganic food basically is your option. And also veganic agriculture uses agriculture to restore the soil and biodiversity. It uses many techniques such as, constant ground cover, composting, humus soil, cover crops, minimum tillage or no tillage to protect the soil organic matter, recycle it back to the soil, recycle nutrients back to the soil, and basically support the fertility and the structure of the soil. So it's restoring the soil, it's restoring biodiversity, it's sequestering carbon. That one of the ultimate goals of veganic agriculture is to produce humus soil, which is sort of like compost on steroids, as it were. It's a very rich soil that traps carbon in the soil and keeps it there, basically. So it's a win-win-win again. It's wonderful.
Love that.
So you're looking at some of the many producers who are already certified with the Biocyclic Vegan label, and Biocyclic Vegan Standard recently certified their first farmer in North America. It's a Canadian vineyard, actually, producing wine. Yeah.
There he is.
So that's that one right there in Canada. Yeah. So we were particularly attracted to the Biocyclic Vegan Standard because they present an understanding about livestock farmers. So we have one farmer on our website, Lawrence Candy, and he's the first farmer in the UK to certify with the Biocyclic Vegan Standard. Lawrence was an organic beef and dairy farmer, and he's shifting to veganic cereal production. And what's great about the Biocyclic Vegan Standard is they have a transition period. They realize that livestock farmers cannot shift overnight. that they need time to wind down the livestock enterprise, and they need time to disengage themselves from the livestock industry, and they make provisions for that. So
Wow.
I can really recommend it if there's any farmers, ranchers in America who are looking
Yes.
for support to transition. You will get that from the Biocyclic Vegan Standard. Yeah.
So that's a great reason for everyone to share this out on your networks. I know that a lot of farmers do come on here to our channel more as trolls, but we hope they come on today and we'll be sharing this out. But seriously, we will be sharing this out to other platforms as well, non-vegan platforms. We want to get this message out. And folks, if you could please help do so. I did want to show the Food Navigator article. If you want to just, we could just touch on that, the information is out there, how this precision fermentation is going to be so disruptive to so many industries, but particularly will hit the farming industry. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, this is what the Rethink X report is talking about. Basically, precision fermentation. It's a similar process to how we brew beer, and they're saying that anywhere we can brew beer, we can make protein. So they're also, saying that this could be the answer to world hunger. That this technique could be done in third world countries to produce high quality protein, without having to farm livestock.
Oh, wow. That is a dream come true. That is truly a dream come true. So anybody that wants to read this report, it is free. It's on your website under, do you remember what section it's under?
I think it's on the About tab, possibly, Lindsay. There might be a link to it there because I talk about it on our About page.
We'll put a link to your About
livestock agriculture. Yeah, the future of livestock agriculture is probably not going to be livestock. It's probably going to be something completely different. Yeah.
That's wonderful news to us vegans. I can tell you that. We're totally in support of this and very happy to hear this good news. Is there anything else we haven't covered that you think we should before we wrap it up? We have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, not really. Just to say that, there's definitely hope there. That, with our 3 roads to stock-free farming, we're trying to provide a way for all farmers to thrive economically. I'm not sure about in the US, but certainly in this country, there's many programs. If you look at the rewilding one, for example, Scottish Forestry has several grant programs where you will be funded to plant trees and take care of those trees. And so it's finding out what grants are available, what funding sources are available. That's a big part of our work. And the survey has been a great tool. What the survey has done has brought farmers to us who want to change. So if there's any organizations out there looking at how to go about this, having a survey that you take to the farmers, and we ask a question at the end of the survey, and it's this. It says, if funding support was in place, would you be willing to shift on the areas of your farm that are rough grazing or permanent pasture? If funding was in place, would you be willing to shift out of livestock agriculture altogether into farming carbon capture by helping native ecosystems to restore? And honestly, most farmers I've interviewed have said yes and maybe. I think we've only had a couple of no's in response to that question.
Wow.
Which is so encouraging.
Yes.
That farmers are willing to change. And so one of our big things is finding funding sources for them and lobbying for subsidy shifts to support them. And that's a critical part of our work that goes alongside. We develop transition plans, and then we have to find funding, grant support for farmers to actually do this work. Yeah.
And so if anyone wants to donate to your site, then go to your website, which we had up for a moment ago,
farmersforstockfreefarming.org. There's a join button on the website. Then you could get our website. There's a donate button. because we would like to be able to support farmers financially as well. I mean, it would be great if where the government won't step in, we could step in and say, okay, we do have some funding to help you repurpose a building, or help you repurpose your land, or help you to buy a polygrub to grow vegetables in. It would be great if we had those resources at our fingertips. And then what we can do is generate more examples of more case studies of farmers who are actually doing it. And that encourages other farmers. Every farmer looks over the fence to see what the neighbor's doing, and
Yes.
the neighbor's thriving. Like the farm I was at the other day, where on 1/4 of an acre, they're making all this money for 5 months in the year. And the neighbors look at that and say, all right, that might be easier than being out on the hillside at midnight in March trying to get a lamb out of a sheep in the freezing cold. This might be a better option. And I would say farming is very hard. Having farmed, it's very hard. It's hard work. And what I'm hearing as I go around the survey is many farmers are willing to give up the livestock. Many farmers are willing to give up the cows and the sheep if they're paid to do this, if they're funded to do this. And I was at a farm the other day, and I was talking to the lady, and she asked me, I was talking to the farmer, and she asked me about my motivation. And I said, well, my heart tells me that ethically I cannot justify taking an animal's life when I don't need to do that to survive. And I talked about my auntie when I worked on the sheep farm, that when the lambs went away to slaughter every year, my auntie would cry. And I told the farmer this, and she said, yeah, I hate it.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, so they do.
I wanted to ask you another question before we move off the subject of the farmers transitioning. What's the learning curve on some of these transitions, and how is that supported? Before we have a few more minutes, so can you just address that? Is it
the learning curve for farmers? Are you talking about?
Yeah, for the farmers to make the transition and learn the learning curve to learn their new.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Lindsay, because some farmers say, well, I would do something else, but I don't feel maybe I have the skills to do that. So what we're putting together is sort of a stock-free advisory team.
Nice.
And we've got the beginnings of it. We've got Lawrence in there, who's now got experience of growing veganic grains, and I've met a couple of other people recently with the veganic vegetable experience and permaculture and agroforestry. So we're hoping that we'll get funding for our advisory team, that we can go out to a farm and help them get started and show them what to do, and maybe pay for a course or something for them. That we can sort of lead them by the hand through that process, hopefully.
That is so great. And I think, if you can come back on again, I definitely know that Jane Unchained would love to have you on again. I will, and others I know we talked about will have you on. And you can help lead the way with the U.S. farmers as well and show them the good news. It makes me feel so empowered. And I do suggest to every vegan to go and get the newsletter, donate if you possibly can, share out, support on social media. All of these things help to get funding and to help to get the word out. So in every way that you can, please help out. But definitely join the newsletter, and also go to the site of the biocyclic.org. Let me pop that in for just a quick minute here. Vegan, biocyclic, vegan.org. And become educated, because when you go out and talk about being vegan, this is scientific information, good business information, climate information, health information, all supported, and a solution to all of these things, which we don't always have the answers when we go out as vegans and say it's bad, horrible, unethical to kill animals. We have solutions. So that's the biggest win to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. When people say, what about the farmers? We have to have an answer there. Right. We can't just say, oh, I haven't thought of that. We have to be able to say, well, actually, there's many ways, many things that they could do instead, and to have that at our fingertips, because it's an important question and it deserves a good answer.
It absolutely does. And we also have to say that we will support them in their transition and to support our governments to support them, to vote for legislation that will help support them, to get the word out about that. That's another way. By getting the newsletter, you'll know when you can take action and help with that. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you. I think we covered everything, and thank you so much for being on. This is such a bright star in our horizon here, and I'm so happy that for you to bring that information to us. So thank you for accepting when I asked you to come on. I'm so happy you did.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. It's been great. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye for now, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.